we're talking about these special scales, we got to talk about the modes. Now, for those of you that even hear about the modes and think, oh my gosh, this is going to be too complicated, it really is not complicated at all. It's one of those things that, you know, these names come from the ancient Greeks, and people sort of think that it's going to be difficult. It's one of those parts of college theory that everybody dreaded. But the truth of the matter is, they're so simple, and they're very, very useful in terms of adding color to the music. Let me show you what I'm talking about. First of all, the easiest way to think of the modes is to go back to the white keys on the keyboard. And there are 7 modes, just like there are 7 white keys. So basically, the way to find the 7 modes is start on any white key, play a scale, and that's going to be one of those modes. And here are the names. Now, you definitely want to check the book. The workbook has a great chart that shows the names of the modes, and it shows the various characteristics. But I'm going to show you each one. When you start on, let's go back down to A for starters. If you start on A and play a scale, that is the Aeolian mode. If you start on B and play a scale, that is the Locrian mode. Start on C, that's the Ionian mode. Now you say, wait a minute, isn't that a C major scale? Yes, more on that in a second. D is the Dorian mode. E is the Phrygian mode. F is the Lydian mode. And G is the Mixolydian mode. So all I'm really doing is I'm just playing the white keys and I'm starting on a different note. Now, here's how it gets simple. First of all, you notice how when I played the one starting on C, the Ionian, you're saying, but wait a minute, that's just like a C major scale. That's exactly the point. Really, it's considered one of the modes, but all it is another name for the C major scale. So definitely check that one off your list. We've been studying about the C major scale through all these chapters. So you already know what the Ionian is. Let's look at the Aeolian for a second, the one that starts on A. Does that look familiar? Sound familiar? That's exactly like the natural minor scale that we talked about in an earlier chapter. So right away, 2 of the 7 modes, you already know everything you need to know about. Ionian is just basically the major scale. Aeolian is basically the natural minor scale. So pretty much check those off the list. Now you've only got 5 that you need to learn. Now, of those 5, here's the best way to think about them. There are 2 of the 5 that are left that are variations of the major scale. And then the other 3 are variations of the minor scale. So let's go to the 2 that are variations of the major scale to start with, okay? So the 2 modes that are based on the major scale are the Lydian and the Mixolydian. And the ones that are based on the minor scale are the Dorian, the Phrygian, and the Locrian. Now let's go to the ones based on major. Each mode has like a unique characteristic that causes you to identify the mode. Lydian, for instance, has a raised 4th. Remember, Lydian is white keys starting on F. So let's listen to that. There's that raised 4th. Right? And Mixolydian has a lowered 7th. There's that lowered 7th. So those are the 2 that are based on major. Now, it is important to remember that, in other words, I could play around, you know, oriented around. I haven't played that raised 4th yet, so you're not going to identify anything I played there as being Lydian because I haven't played the hot note. In other words, you have to hear that variation. Otherwise, you're just going to say, well, that sounded like F major to me. But as soon as you hear, then you're going to say, identify that hot note. That's not the typical. Think about this. You know, oh, when the saints go marching in versus meet George Jetson. You hear the difference? This is F major. Oh, when the saints, versus this is the Jetsons, the cartoon show. Meet George Jetson. Or how about, you know, the Simpsons theme? Now, the interesting thing about Lydian, you know, all of these modes kind of strike our ears a certain way. And as we've been talking, you know, some of that's based on just movies and TV and how composers use these modes. But when we think Lydian, when we think the raised fourth, our brains automatically kind of think futuristic. You know, there was a piece by Holst called The Planets where, you know, he used that Lydian mode extensively. And, you know, everything about the Lydian mode makes us think future, makes us think space, which is why it was a great choice for the Jetsons, right? And that's the thing about these modes. They all have certain personalities that kind of make us lean a particular way. Now, the other one that's based on major is the Mixolydian. Mixolydian has the lowered seventh. Listen to that. I'm going to play it an octave lower here. So Mixolydian is major with its variation, but starting on G. Sounds like major, but then it's got that lowered seventh. Now, right away, you know, you think about songs that feature that flat seven, like or just think of like the Birthday Song by the Beatles. That's a Mixolydian motif. Now, Mixolydian, you can also say, well, you know, that's sort of like that blues scale we talked about too, right? Because it's that lowered seventh is a big feature in the blues scale, and you'd be right. A lot of this isn't about, you know, defining, oh, that's strictly this or that's strictly that, because basically you've got 12 tones and they're organized different ways. But, you know, another song, all God's people singing glory, glory. It's pretty much right in the Mixolydian mode. It's major, but it's got that flat seven. So those are the two modes that are based on major. Lydian has the raised fourth. Lydian is white keys starting on F. That's kind of the futuristic one. And Mixolydian is white keys starting on G, and that's major with a flatted seventh. So it's got that kind of bluesy sound to it. So those are the two modes based on major, Lydian and Mixolydian. Now let's take a look at the modes that are based on minor.